Right, I'm making this video just to discuss some of the errors that I made when I set this game up. Now, how I tend to do this is I jump in and do the main campaign or the biggest scenario, whatever it is, with every game. So I find that I use a modular method of learning, and the fact that I'll go through the sequence of play, I'll go through the setup, watch a video on setup, and then maybe read some rules for the appropriate scenario that applies to the setup, and then I'll go through the sequence to the action phase, watch videos on that, etc., and then read the appropriate rules as I get to do them, rather than reading it all up front, which I find it doesn't sink in anyway doing it that way. It's up to you. It's just the method that works for me. I think most people would be sensible and just go for a beginner scenario when they start this. Anyway, so errors. With the Polish bot, I had two merchants set up. You're only supposed to set the first merchant from the setup card on the board. I also didn't account for these Polish vassals like Warsaw. They must be set up as being owned if you're setting up a bot. I also had military leaders like this under military advisors. A military leader would be attached to an army, so you'd put it there. So I've had to move these little displays up a bit to give me room to put generals under there. I've had to go back and correct the treasuries for that, because when you start, you've got 4 ducats you're going to have to pay to set up all these advisors, and they come directly out of your treasury. In terms of your cards in your hand, you're only supposed to have 4, whereas when I'd finished correcting the military leaders thing, I had 5 in Castile's hands. So I've decided to use a really nice card for an advisor. So it's a good advisor, but I would have preferred to keep that card to be played later. Another thing we did wrong was we set up the missions, the ideas incorrectly. Now, what you're supposed to do is draw the first 2 at random from each deck, and then you're supposed to have these 3 compulsory ones or mandatory ones that are always in the initial setup. So I've included those. One thing that I did notice, I watched some setup video that showed the guy actually picking. When you start your setup, you have to pick 1 card from each of these decks here, and then after that you can choose the next 3 cards. So I could have 3 greens if I want, or a mixture of 3, 2 blues and a military. Now, what it says in the setup is you've got to do that before you decide on your missions. Now, the way I saw it demonstrated is the guy was saying, oh, I've got these missions and there's going to be a lot of military activity, so I'll draw military cards. Well, you can't do it that way. You've got to draw your cards before you pick your missions. So on a mission, you draw 3 of these. There's specific missions, like there's 3 green ones you've got to take, and you've got to pick 2 of them. So you've always got to go for your green ones to start with. When I mean green background. I'm not referring to like these green cost things here. Done a little more research on bots, hence some of the corrections. I'm still not sure about the bot deck being shuffled. I've not seen that anywhere, and currently I've got my bot decks unshuffle. But I'm sure you've got to shuffle them. I'll sort that out eventually. But the first thing we're going to be doing is we're looking at the Ottoman Empire. They're the first player in this scenario. So you've got a whole series of actions you can choose from in the action phase. You know, you can play these cards out of your hand. There's various free actions that you could do at any time, and there's what you can do is you can play these as well, so you can do ideas if you want to. You see these have all got costs here. Or you can actually, well, you have to do this, you have to play an event. So if you pick an event, you put your marker on it, and then any other events that were face up at that time, you put 2 ducats on each one. And then because you played an event, you draw the next one out of the setup. Now whether that continues to pull from this deck when all of these are done, I don't know. And yet again, I need to read up on that. I haven't found the bit that refers to that. Yeah, that'll do for the corrections before we actually get started.